Now we are starting with the topic corrosion, right? As you have, as you must have seen certain metals that, as you know, that they have metals have a specific luster in them, right? But what happens with time, you get to see there are certain metals which they just lose their luster, right? That means due to development, or you can see that there is a deposition of certain kind of layer on it, right? Which actually just fade their metallic character. So that is due to the corrosion. So what is the corrosion? Corrosion is the eating away of metal article is called as corrosion, right? And you know that in case of iron, it is being given a special name, that because it is so much prone to corrosion that it is given it has been given a special name in case of iron, that is rusting. So rusting is actually corrosion of iron. So it is a specific name. See, corrosion is a word which is used for all metals, right? But rusting is a word which only you can say denotes the corrosion of the iron. So the corrosion in case of iron is called as something, the rusting. Now, the rusting do not occur as such. There are certain conditions which leads to rusting, or there are certain conditions under which the rusting take place. So, what are those conditions actually? The rusting take place under the condition the moisture and the air. So, that means we can say the moist air leads to actually the occurrence of the rusting. As similarly, the corrosion also do not occur as such. There are this you can say there are specific gases, or there are specific substances which are present in air, and which are specific in the case of specific metals, and they leads to just eating away of the metal article, that is the corrosion. That means there are certain factors which lead to the corrosion, and these factors are different for the different metals. As I told you, for rusting it is a moist air that just you can say the deposition of the brown colored layer on the iron article, right? So that is the rust. So what is the rusting? I'll write in a this thing, the chemical equation. See, this is the iron article. When iron article comes in contact with moist air, so it leads to the formation of Fe2O3.XH2O, which is a brown color flaky layer that gets or you can say which is a rust color flaky layer that get deposited on the iron article, and that is something, the rust. So what is rusting? It is the corrosion in case of iron. What are the conditions which are necessary? The moisture and the air, or we can say the moist air is necessary condition for the rusting to take place. What is the the chemical equation involved? It is Fe plus O2, that is the moist air. See, alone oxygen cannot you can say the favor rusting. There should be a moisture in air, so that means moist air is important for the rusting. So it leads to the formation of Fe2O3.XH2O, which indicates the rust. And what is the color for the rust? That is the brown color layer that just deposit on the iron article. So this is the rusting. Now, as you know that rusting actually has an adverse effect on iron. It just you can say lowers the property of all kind of properties of the iron. So that means we need to prevent rusting. And how we can prevent rusting? Just look at the board. See, there are many methods by which we can prevent rusting. So how we can prevent rusting? We can prevent it by, or you can say we can just provide it the sacrificial protection. We can provide it the barrier protection. We can provide it or you can say we can use anti-rust solutions. So these are the methods by which we can just prevent rusting. Now we will be discussing these factors one by one. Now first factor what I am discussing is the barrier protection. What do you mean by the barrier? Suppose if like you go on a road and there is a barrier, what happens? That means you are just prevented from going. So similar in a similar manner, the barrier protection means we will be using certain kind of barriers which will not allow the moist air to meet with an iron article. So what is that barrier protection, or what the barriers can be used in that case? So barriers which can be used in this case is, it can be oiling, it can be greasing, right, and it can be by use of paints. So all these three things, the oiling, greasing and the paints, they just provide the barrier protection for the iron article. That means it do not allow iron to come in contact with the moisture, and if they will not come in contact with the moisture, how the rusting will take place? That means rusting will be prevented by just using this barrier protection method. Now the second is that we can use anti-rust solutions like alkyl phosphates. See, there are so many solutions like alkyl phosphates which are anti-rust solution. That means if we will just apply this anti-rust solution on the iron article, it will not allow the iron to come in contact with oxygen. That means the rusting will be prevented. So again, we will be just preventing rusting by use of anti-rust solutions. Now the third method is that the sacrificial protection. That means we are using certain you can say the substances which are just which is again not allowing the iron article to come in contact with the oxygen layer. So what is this sacrificial protection, or what methods are involved in the sacrificial protection? They are galvanization, tinning and electroplating. Right, and moreover we can also use, see, the barrier method can also be alloying. That means we can just use an alloy of the the iron. You know that the iron or alloy of the iron is the steel, which you can say if we add carbon to the iron, it just gives rise to the steel, different kinds of steel, and the steel is resistant to corrosion. So that means by alloying also we can just you can say help in, you can also make it as a separate point. What you do, just make it as a separate point, that is by alloying. So by alloying also, that means by using the alloy of the iron, we can just prevent you can say the rusting to take place. Now coming to the sacrificial protection, as I told you, there are different methods for the sacrificial. One is galvanization, other is tinning and other is electroplating. So we will be discussing one by one. See, galvanization method is something very important. What is it? Suppose I have an iron article. Galvanization means depositing a thin layer of zinc on the iron article. So that means in this case what we are doing, we are just on the surface of it, we are just depositing a thin layer of zinc like this. So this red indicates actually the zinc layer. Now the question must be just striking your mind that the zinc is again a metal, so how that means the corrosion of zinc can also take place. So how it is protecting the iron article? So you should know that zinc is a self-protecting metal. What do you mean by self-protecting metal? That means it has a tendency that it can protect its own self from the corrosion to occur. So see how, when this zinc comes in contact with oxygen, obviously it is going to come in contact with oxygen, and you know that the metal has a great affinity to combine with oxygen, as we did in the reaction of metal with oxygen. So when the metal will combine with oxygen, it will lead to the formation of metal oxide. That means it will lead to the formation of zinc oxide. Obviously the zinc oxide is going to form. This zinc oxide, what happens to this zinc oxide, or how it prevents the rusting to occur? This zinc oxide layer is actually impermeable to the gases. That means it do not allow the moisture to pass inside, and if the moisture will not pass inside, how it is going to come in contact with the iron article? And if the iron article is not going to come in contact with the oxygen, as I have told you, it is the necessary condition for the rusting to occur. So that means the rusting won't take place. So if somebody asks you that what is galvanization, so just answer in this way, that it is a method in which the zinc layer is just deposited on the iron article. So what happens, how it protects? When zinc comes in contact with oxygen, it forms the zinc oxide. This layer is actually impermeable to the gases. That means it do not allow the oxygen layer to pass into it, right? So that means it just prevent the underlying iron from the rusting. So this is something, the galvanization. Similar, the second sacrificial method is tinning. what we do in this, we just dip the iron article in a, you can say this solution of the tin, and after just dipping into the tin, it gets covered with the tin, and again tin just protected from rusting because it do not allow the moisture to pass into it, and if the moisture will not pass, it will not combine with iron and there will be no rusting. Third is the electroplating. What we will be doing in this electroplating? In this electroplating, we will be just, you can say, two metals are there which prevent the rusting of iron by electroplating method. One is copper and one is chromium. That means by the process of electrolysis, we will be depositing the layer of copper on an iron article, and when this layer of copper get deposited on an iron article, it prevents it from rusting. This is how, again I am just explaining this electroplating one in detail, just look at the board carefully.